My life in Hollywood, stories from my life. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne. Stories from my life in Hollywood. Well. I have been sharing with y'all different stories from my life of late, and I have done that in the past, but I've got so many new people on my channels and I thought, well, I'm going to share some of these stories again. And many of you have heard them, many of you have not. Many are new stories, and many I'm sharing more details. So I hope you listen. And I just did one on taking care of Mama when my mama died. I did another one on my first husband. Did he die? And uh, and so that was my first husband, not my husband, the love of my life, who I've been married to for 30 some years. I love my husband, and I'm very happily married. I'm just kind of reflecting upon my life a bit. And so this one, I mean, there's so much to this story that I'm probably going to skip over a lot of details. But as y'all know, I left the holler of Appalachia, West Virginia area, and moved out to Hollywood when I was a teenager. Now, my mom and she had a great big white Pontiac, and I had a green Samsonite suitcase, and away we went. We did not know where we were going to go. We just happened to end up out there. And I'd always dreamed of going to Hollywood. I'd wrote Walt Disney a letter when I was 6 years old and sent him a coloring book in a coloring book contest and said, Mr. Disney, I'm going to be coming to Hollywood. I'm going to come out there to Disneyland. And eventually I ended up at Disneyland. And anyhow, I actually worked at the Disneyland Hotel as a hostess when I first got to California. And anyhow, so my mom and I moved to California, and we moved to an area called Long Beach. And my aunt lived in Long Beach, and so we moved out to Long Beach, and I ended up down by the beach. And I went to nursing school and became a nurse, and ended up going to Hollywood, and how that happened was my nursing instructor said, Diana, you need to go to Hollywood, and you need to work at that big, prestigious hospital on the VIP unit. Well, that stuck in my mind. That really stuck in my mind for a very, very long time. And so after going to work at a little rinky-dink hospital by the beach, I decided I was going to drive up to Hollywood. By that time, I'd say I had a $450 little old wasn't broke down, but barely running blue car. And I paid $475 for it. And by that time, I think I had bought a new Toyota, but it didn't have air conditioning. This is way back. And it did not have air conditioning. And so I drove up to Los Angeles, to Hollywood, to Beverly Hills, and I put my application in. Well, they hired me on the spot. And I said to them, well, can I work the VIP floor? And they said, well, you have to interview for that. And so I did, and they hired me right on spot too. And so that changed my life. And I was there a number of years, and it was just fantastic and fabulous and incredible. What an incredible job. I met so many amazing, fascinating people who, wanted to either go out with me or date me or everything. And of course, I developed, relationships along the way. And one of those relationships is with who I call Young Doctor in Love. And he was a young intern resident. He was a resident. He was a doctor by then, I think, and so he was amazing. He was gorgeous. He was young. He was 3 years older than me. I was in my early 20s. And so he's, probably mid 20s. And we had an amazing relationship, and he loved me and I loved him. And I would go between my beach apartment, because I was still living at the beach. I'd drive all the way up there, and then I'd stay at his apartment. And so Mama would be coming all around from back in the holler back to Texas, and because we would go to Texas, we had what I call relatives there, but they weren't real relatives, but they were just like relatives, family, friends. And she'd go down there, and then she'd come back, and she'd stay at the beach apartment, and then she'd want to come up to Hollywood and stay with us. And here in this little tiny apartment, his little tiny apartment, that didn't work out so good. You can only imagine her on the rollaway bed, pull-out couch, your mama in an apartment, and with your boyfriend and me and he, our busy, crazy schedules. So anyhow, Mama went back to the beach, and so I continued, and I had, the boyfriend, but he let me, I don't want to say date, but go out with other people platonically. So in other words, I could not, have a romantic relationship with him, but I could go out to lunch because I was meeting all kinds of famous people. I mean, I'll tell you, some of the most famous people that you can actually imagine. And I really did. I met all kinds of famous people. And, I got asked out all the time. I met a man I call Mr. Big, and he was a powerhouse in Hollywood. Everybody knew him. Everybody knew him. And he was smitten with me. He sent me flowers all the time to the nursing station, and people say, he's in love with you, he's in love with you. But I said, I have a boyfriend. Boyfriend said it was okay. He said, it's okay, you can go to lunch with him, but no hanky-panky. That man was much older anyhow. And so Mr. Big and I became great friends. And I would go over and meet him at the famous hotels for dinner. And, my car, one time I had my boyfriend's car, and it stalled out at the valet parking, and they had to push it up the hill. And then I go in and I trip over and fall flat, and Mr. Big is standing there, and he picks me up and says, welcome to Hollywood. And so he put me in touch with a lot of different people, and a lot of different, I got a lot of different little tiny small parts in different shows and things like that, some well-known shows, just little itty-bitty things. But, I was making good money doing it. And because I was working real regularly, thanks to Mr. Big. And Mr. Big was in love with me, but he knew I had a boyfriend, so he respected that. And so there was no hanky-panky or anything like that. Well, my boyfriend and I ended up breaking up. It was, kind of my doing. And because I'd met these, I don't want to go into much detail because they're very famous. I met these gentlemen, very gorgeous, very wealthy, very extremely well known, made a very famous star out of one actress. And I could have been that star because I used to have a certain hairdo. My hair was real like Marilyn Monroe, and it was platinum blonde and all that. And well, he ended up making her, then when I broke up with those well-known people, they were kind of a family, and I broke up with them. I always say they took my hairdo and put it on this famous star and made her a star. And I could have been that star, but I'm glad I'm not, because she had totally different results than I had. Even though she became famous, I would not have wanted to have had the kind of situation that she had. And I had my own journey to travel, which was wonderful. I had a wonderful, wonderful journey. And of course, y'all know I'm married to my husband, and I love him. We've been married 30-some years, 3 beautiful children, wonderful journey, traveling all over the world, living all over the world, all kinds of things. And I married the love of my life, okay? And kind of the long way around, and I had quite a few different relationships along the way, besides Young Doctor in Love. He was one of them, one of many, I have to say. I had quite a few boyfriends, and, I think it was my personality that attracted them, my warmth, my kindness, my politeness. I often say kindness is the new beauty, or kindness is beautiful, politeness and kindness and warmth. And so many people at that time in Hollywood were not, all that warm and all that kind. Here I was from Hillbilly Holler. I had a real strong accent, which I worked on and cleared out. So if you hear me talking sometimes, when I'm talking about Hillbilly Holler, I kind of revert to my old way of talking. And then, we said words like tar for tire, push for push. I'm going to carry you to the store. We had all kinds of saying, far in the fireplace. Just a zillion words. I can't even think of them all now. But anyhow, where was I? Where was I talking about in my story? So, but I had all kinds of boyfriends. I mean, you name it, I've dated some rich, famous people and all that. And so I had, I enjoyed that journey. It was a healing process for me. I'm not bragging because I had a lot of trauma growing up, a lot of trauma. I talked about that in other videos in the past. Very, very trauma, a lot of trauma. And so having grown up with such trauma, I needed to heal. And growing up in we were poor when I was little. We had rusted out old cars and, poor people's food boxes. We always had enough to eat, but we had to go get, they were called commodity boxes before food stamps. And we had to go to, my brother would drive it in the car in reverse because it would only drive in reverse. There was something broken on the car, and he was 16 and I was 5, and we'd drive through the town backwards to go get the poor people's boxes so we'd have food to eat. My mama would cook it, and I'd be looking out the window for the police to make sure they did not pull us over, going in reverse through the town. I think we had Andy and Barney as our police, so to speak. I think we only had 2 policemen. And so we were poor, and so going to Hollywood and later Palm Springs and later Newport Beach really, really brought a great deal of healing. I needed that. I needed that healing of the glitz and the glamour and all of that. I was so drawn to that because I came from such poverty area, people in rusted out old cars and people, getting commodity boxes and houses falling down, dilapidated houses and all that. Although by the time I was a teenager, my mom had remarried and we lived in a beautiful house. So if there are people from the Holler watching this, they remember the beautiful house that I lived in the at the end of my towards middle of my teenage years, before I left for the Hollywood. And so I dated a lot in Hollywood. And I had a lot of itty bitty parts. I mean, just tiny little itty bitty things. But I got to know some well-known people and go to some very, very famous places. And you'd all know those famous places. And got invited and, sort of what I call a regular. Okay. And I don't know if I was a regular, but I was, invited to places. Okay. And so it was fascinating. It was fascinating. And I guess I could have made a career out of it, but I wasn't an actress. I just did the parts. I didn't have any talent that way. I had other talents, but not as an actress. But I was just having fun. I just had a lot of fun. And it was so healing for me. When I first got to Hollywood, I was so young, and my mom and I had met this man, different man than I told in the one story about the oil man, but this man owned big car dealerships, and he was going across the country driving a car for some reason. We met him when I got to Hollywood. He wanted to take me to lunch. So he took me to lunch at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and there was a famous singer and his wife that lived around the corner. And I said, Lord, as I'm sitting out there at this famous hotel, as a teenager, and I'm sipping on iced tea, sweet tea, I said, I want to be drinking sweet tea in this famous singer's house. Do you know that 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, a few weeks later, I ended up at that big famous singer's house talking to his wife and he and his wife and having sweet tea. Can you imagine? So be mindful of the words you say and the words you put out there, because it can come about, okay? And so, yeah, it was just wonderful. And but it was a lot of trying times. I had some hard times because in the beginning I didn't have much money. So, I drove an old car in the beginning. Later, I had a real nice car when I left, but, starting out in the beginning, it was, pretty rough. But it just really healed that part of my life. Then after a few years of living in Hollywood, I moved to Palm Springs. And that was a whole nother story, how we ended up there. We got in an ice storm coming back from New York because my mom, I wanted to go to New York. I moved to Texas and went up to the Holler to stay for a while. And then we drove up to New York City, Broadway on a Saturday night. And they were so nice. The taxi cab drivers helped me turn around on a one-way street. People say New Yorkers aren't friendly. They were so friendly to me. Of course, I had a brand new sports car with California plates on it by that time, a red sports car. And I was, very young. And so we got turned around. And so we went back to the Holler, and then we went to decided to go back to California. I was going to restart my life back over again out there in California. And then what happened, we got in an ice storm. We had a detour. We ended up going past Palm Springs. I said, Mama, let's just turn the car around. Let's just go to Palm Springs. Went over there, rented an apartment, and the rest is history. So I lived over there and, went through my first marriage, which I did a video on. And that was a very brief one. And then, I loved Palm Springs. I loved LA, Las Vegas, all of that. And then I would continue to work in LA, and then I would work, in Palm Springs. I'd just work all over. And then I ended up in Newport Beach. I decided to move to Newport Beach, and I moved to Newport Beach in a windstorm. I had a car that was rocking back and forth. I was all loaded up with my car, moved to Newport Beach. Well, ultimately, I was living in the Newport Beach area when I met my husband, and that forever changed my life. Met the love of my life, married him. I had to get on a plane, go across country to a town I'd never been to, southern-like town, very southern, and I had to go to work for like minimum wage. I went to work for minimum wage. And my husband and I got married shortly thereafter. I've told the story of how I met my husband many times. That's a fantastic story. So look that one up, how I met my husband. And then we ended up traveling the world, living around the world in wonderful places. And then we had 3 beautiful children and continued to move around a lot. And that was just wonderful. So, life is kind of a mixed bag. You get hard times, you get fantastic times, you get times in between, you get times that you don't know what you're doing, you get times that you're scared, like, what am I doing? Where am I going? How am I going to do this? But I wanted to make my dreams happen. I really did. I was all about making dreams happen. I was all about living my best life. And, I married the love of my life. I mean, how blessed can you be? And I had a lot of love in my life prior to that, but I married the true love of my life. And we've been married well over 30 years. And so I'm the love of his life. He's the love of my life. And our children are the loves of our lives. And so it's a lot of years ago, a lot of history. I've had a blessed life. I've had a traumatic life. So, behind all the blessings also was a tremendous amount of trauma. And those that have listened to those videos understand how traumatic some of those early years were for me. And they were traumatic. Okay. There were things that most people don't have to go through that I went through. And, but you know what? It made me who I am. I wouldn't change any of it for anything, because I probably wouldn't be who I am today had I not gone through all that trauma. I wouldn't want to go through it again. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I have to tell you, I really can be a mentor to people going through what I went through. Okay. And, I believe that our stories can help heal other people. And in the journey, in the process, it heals us. Well, I'm well healed now. And yet my story, I know, can heal other people and help other people when they're going through it or after they've been through it. And so I like to share my stories sometimes. And some things are personal. I don't share everything, okay? I'm not going to share everything. Some things are personal, but that's okay. Some things I choose to share, some things I don't. And that's the way all of us should be. We only share what we want, okay? As long as it's authentic and truthful. That's all that really matters. So my Hollywood days were fascinating days. And, it's just all been a journey. And it goes by fast because I'm almost 70 years old. And to think about it. But you know what? I consider these the best years of my life too. All the years of my life, even those traumatic years of my life, set the foundation for who I am. You can let trauma destroy you, or you can let it push you forward to be your best you. And I chose at a very young age to be my best me. Back when we left for California, my mom and I found this old book I've kept for years. It was my first motivational spiritual book it was like a little religious book, and it said, you can do this, you can make it happen. And I remember reading that before we left for California from the Holler, that you can do this, you can make it happen, no matter what it is. And I'd come out of some pretty tough circumstances. And maybe that's why I was drawn to Hollywood, because that was part of my healing journey. I had to go to some place that I could truly heal, that could give me the yin to the yang of my life. And my mama too, she didn't want to be in the holler. And she stayed in Palm Springs almost to the end, because it was a very healing place for her to be out of the poorness. And she grew up in the Great Depression and just terribly poor, outhouses and broke down cars and not enough of this and not enough of that. And so she was, she stayed out there because she didn't want that reminder, and it helped her to heal too. So sometimes we're attracted to things that help us to heal and help us become our best selves. We're attracted to people, places, and things that help us heal that part of us. And so our journeys can help other people to heal when we share them with the right people in the right way. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy all my stories. Much love to you. May God bless you. I hope you like, share, subscribe, and I hope to talk to y'all soon again. Bye-bye.